Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a little fun video. Fall starting up. The weather's changing. I don't know about you guys, but here it's getting a little more gloomy, it's getting a little cooler, and I'm in love. I am so ready for fall, and I thought it would be fun to give you guys a few recommendations on what books I think you should be reading this fall to enjoy the season to the fullest. We're gonna just jump right in because I don't want this to go too long. I have a pretty big list. Do not fear. Have I ever given you a bad recommendation? Don't answer that. Before we start this video, I want to tell you guys that I don't have these books on hand because I packed them away into my moving pod, so I don't have the physical copies with me, but I'll put the pictures up here in case you guys are interested. The first portion I want to do is to quickly go over the few standalone books that I have on my list, and by few I mean literally just 3. I feel like I'm like extra awkward today, and I don't know why. Okay, the first one is To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. This book is an Ariel retelling where there is a pirate prince and then a siren princess. The pirate prince is trying to kill the siren princess because she is known as the notorious siren that kills a bunch of people, and she has a reputation. On the flip side, the siren princess is also trying to kill the prince because something happens and her mom gets mad at her, the queen gets mad at her, changes her into a human and says, "You have to stay a human until you give me the prince's heart." And as a siren, they hate humans. So you can imagine just how upset she is that she got turned into a human. So this whole fantasy world kind of follows her as she's trying to lie to the prince as a human, gain his trust, and then ultimately cut his heart out and give it to her mom. The premise is really fun. It's a really good paced book. I've enjoyed it. Any type of fantasy book I feel like is really good for fall. So if you guys want a quick standalone fantasy book with enemies to lovers, magic, and a really good set of main characters that banter off with one another, definitely pick up To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. The next book I have down for a standalone is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. Now this is a book that I recently read. Okay, not so recent. It's been months, but it feels really recent because there's something about this book that really sticks with me. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's the setting or just how relatable it was. So you follow this girl named Autumn as she tries to navigate growing up and going to school. She has this really close childhood friend named Vin. Their moms are like best friends. So they basically grew up together and they were like attached at the hip when they were younger. As they got older, things kind of changed, people changed a little bit, and they kind of grew apart. They had their own friend groups, they had their own significant others, and you kind of follow her as she goes to high school, meets these new friends, but then also has this kind of dread in her heart about her friendship with Finn and where it all really kind of went wrong. You kind of start learning little by little about their background, their history. It's just so heartbreaking and realistic. I feel like everyone can relate to kind of growing apart from friends because you're just not at the same parts of life anymore, and it's completely natural, but it doesn't make it any less sad. This book is really easy to read. It's gloomy, it's sad, perfect for fall. If it's raining outside, grab this book and you can just really feel the setting. The next standalone book, which is our last, is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. The reason why I think this is a good fall read is because this will break your fucking heart. It will break your heart. I don't care who you are, it will break your heart. There's a lot of topics on war. There are a lot of things that happen during war that will be really uncomfortable, so definitely look up trigger warnings, but I adore this book. I think it was told so beautifully, and I haven't even told you what it's about. So this book is about 2 sisters, one older, one younger, obviously, during the times of war in France, World War II specifically. And the older sister is married with a child and has to deal with life after her husband was drafted into the war. And then you have the younger sister. She is more, I wouldn't say innocent, but more carefree because she doesn't have the responsibilities of having having to take care of a child. So she is more open to the idea of fighting back and using herself and her own safety to help in the cause. She does not want her country to be occupied by Germany anymore, and she wants to help in any way possible. I think this book did a beautiful way of showing what people went through during World War II, not specifically towards soldiers, but normal people back at home, back in their countries. It was really eye-opening because we hear a lot about World War II in school. We hear a lot about the genocide part, but we don't hear that much about how each country was affected and the timeline for that. So it was really fascinating to kind of get a glimpse, just even like the slightest glimpse of how France handled World War II and how their people lived during the time. It's really, truly heartbreaking. It was a beautiful story about friendship, about love, about family, and about how two very different people cope with war and how they grow from it. It was so good. It was so good. Now jumping into the series that I have on my list. First being Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I think this is going to be a 3-book series. Right now there's only 2 books out, and it's Belladonna and then Foxglove. I've only read the first book, but I really enjoyed it. I just haven't had the time to read the second one, but eventually I'll get to it, just like how I'll get to the other books on my TBR. Belladonna follows this girl named Signa, and she grew up as an orphan because everyone around her just dies. So everyone thinks she's cursed because anytime someone takes her in, another relative takes her in, they die. Another relative takes her in, they die. And she's just like, can you stop following me? Can you stop following me around because everyone is just dying? And you're like, who is following her? Death. Death is following her. Death in this book is personified. He is a real, tangible person that follows her throughout her entire life, ends up living with her uncle. So her aunt recently passed away right before she got there, but it was suspicious. It wasn't a natural cause. Her aunt got sick, was really sudden. When Signa gets to this manor, her cousin is also sick with the same disease that took her aunt. So now Signa is trying to figure out, well, what's going on, because this is really suspicious, and Death comes to help her solve the mystery. It's a fun little like gothic fantasy with a hint of mystery. It was fun. I wouldn't say it was like the best thing I've ever read, but if you want a like light-hearted gothic fantasy for fall, definitely pick this up. Next is a really recent fantasy read that made me literally fall in love with the author. Follow her on anything to make sure that as soon as she updates on the series, I am up to date, you know? And that is Carissa Broadbent. She is the author of The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Her titles are really long, but you guys get what I mean. This is set in a world where it's gonna be 6 books in total. This duology is focusing on Aurea and Rain. Aurea is the adopted human daughter to a vampire king. He is the king of the Nightborn Kingdom. She enrolls into this competition that kind of gives off Hunger Game vibes. It's a to the death competition where the winner gets a wish from their goddess. It's a fast-paced fantasy about vampires, magic, Hunger Games-esque competition, enemies to lovers, and betrayal, and it's so entertaining. I really do think you should read this series. The second book is much better than the first one in my opinion. I still really like the first one, but the second one really dug into emotions, and I love that in a book. I don't know why. I like being sad in books because I think sadness is one of the strongest emotions, and if a book is able to make me feel that way, that's a good book, you know? That's a good book. The next series on my list is one of those series that I wish I could wipe my memory and reread for the first time again because I adore this series. It was one of those things that really makes you obsessed with the characters. After you finish the series, you immediately pull up social media of any kind, Pinterest, TikToks, Instagram, any type of content relating to this series, you just want to gobble up because you did not get enough of. And that is the Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. This is a series within the Shadowhunter world. I haven't read the other series other than The Mortal Instruments, but I can tell you, I really highly doubt that the other series are going to hit as hard as Infernal Devices. There's something about the love triangle and the tragedy and just the found family in that series that really did it for me. You follow this girl named Tessa. She moves from America to London. It's set in Victorian era London. The reason why she's moving to London is because her brother is in trouble. She's trying to help her brother. But when she gets there, it's not her brother that meets her. It's these two older ladies. They end up kidnapping her and they're forcing her to use this type of magic in her that she didn't know she had. She gets rescued by the shadow hunters of London, and if you guys don't know what the shadow hunters are, they are people that are half human, half angels. So they have angels' blood in them, so they are able to do things that normal humans are not able to. And she just finds out so much about a life that she just never knew, about her family history, just a lot. There's this love triangle and this found family in this story. The love triangle is one of the best things I've ever read in literature. I can't even think of another book or series where a love triangle was done so well that I was in physical pain for both of the love interests. Both of them. It's not like the normal love interest where both of the guys are in love with the girl. Yes, that was part of it, but the boys were like brothers. They were as close to brothers as you can possibly get without being blood related, and they were in love with the same girl, and it's just so tragic. It is so beautiful. The quotes, guys, if you are to annotate any book, I highly recommend you annotate the Infernal Devices because the quotes in that series is insane to me. Chef's kiss. It is a really fun, tragic love story and fantasy book about monsters. Demons are involved. Angels, obviously. Speechless. One of my favorite series of all time, to be fair. I will have nothing but good things to say about it. Next up, we have the Six of Crows Duology by Leigh Bardugo. 6 criminals, hardcore criminals of their own right, coming together to do a heist. That sounds really simple, but there's just so much to it. The found family is crazy. Like, I did not imagine them being a found family because they're criminals that, like, on the outside seem like they hate each other, but if things got hard, you know they have each other's backs. It follows multiple POVs, so it's really interesting when they're doing their missions. So many things are happening at the same time and you keep switching POVs. You're seeing everything play out and it's just such a flawless timeline. It's so entertaining to watch. The storyline is fun. Kaz and Inej, there's not a heavy plot of romance in these books, but the little glimpses of romance, so freaking good. So good. Kaz is for a lack of better term, kind of the mob boss, gang boss. And Inej is his secret spy. I love the relationship. The other 4 are all really interesting characters from their own backgrounds and you learn so much about them. You really get attached to them and eventually they just feel like a whole big family. It's a really fun fantasy world to get into, and the reason why I think it's really good for fall is because the world and the city that it's set in is always gloomy. It's always dirty and gloomy. On a lighter note, but the same high risk kind of situation, we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yaros. Now, everyone and their moms have read this book, so if you haven't already, I so recommend you guys get into it. It is a book about dragons, war, military school, enemies to lovers, dragons. You follow this girl named Violet Sorrengail, and she spent her entire life studying into the scribe quadrant, which are people that kind of study in the libraries, offer up information that other quadrants are looking for, and so on and so on. But at the very beginning of the book, her mother is throwing her into the writer's quadrant, where she's gonna have to face a lot of trials, near-death trials, to try to even remotely have a chance with bonding with a dragon. The pacing is really good. The enemies, the lovers, is really good. The male love interest. The cliffhanger in this book is so juicy. The second book comes out in November and I'm so excited to be picking up that book, guys. I am so freaking excited. After Fourth Wing, I think I have to talk about Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Is another fantasy book that got so popular recently, and I'd really enjoy this book. There's something about the setting of it and the writing of it that really feels like autumn romance book that is set in a fantasy world. It's really fun and whimsical, but then it also really touches on war and how it affects people. I went into this not expecting anything, but came out with so much more. It's dual POV. You follow Iris and Roman. They both work at this publishing company called the Oath Gazette, and they're competing for the same promotion. But on the side, Iris is trying to find her missing brother. The last time she saw him was when he left for the war, and she has not heard from him ever since. So with everything lining up in her life, all the tragedies and like all the things that are happening in her life, she ends up embarking on a journey to find her brother, which brings her closer to the war. Magical typewriters involved where her like letters to her brother are being sent to someone else, then they are replying, and there's like this magical pen pal relationship going on. It's really beautifully written. I think the quotes in here are so pretty. The romance is definitely the forefront of this book rather than the fantasy. I think the next book and onwards are going to focus more on the fantasy aspects, but right now it's a lot of world building and character development, so you have so much of that romance. Okay, the last fantasy series that I want to talk about are the Throne of Glass series and also the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. If you haven't read these series, I don't know what to say to convince you other than it's so good. The Throne of Glass series follows a girl named Selena Sardothian. She is a assassin. She is best of the best. Everyone knows her in Adarlan or Adarlan. I don't even remember how I pronounced it back then. She is currently in a prison until one day the prince comes and gets her and tells her of this competition that his father, the king, is holding to find his personal assassin. It sounds really like a mundane kind of fantasy story, but there are 8 books in this series and it becomes so much more than that. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And the one thing that I love about Sarah J. Maas is that she is able to put in little hints and clues in the very early stages of the story and then bring it back up in the later stages, which is so fun as a reader to read. And it's even more fun when it's like a multiverse, and that's why I want to jump into ACOTAR. ACOTAR is set in another universe, but it's basically in the same multiverse. There are a bunch of theories out there that Sarah J. Maas is a mastermind. So ACOTAR is another series, and it follows Feyre Archison. She is a poor peasant girl trying to make ends meet. One day she shoots an arrow and kills a wolf. It wasn't just a wolf, it was a fae. So this powerful fae comes to collect the debt. It's a life for a life. Things happen. She ends up going with the Fae to the Fae realm, and a lot of things unfold. There is this secret magic curse lingering in the Fae realm. I can't tell you how the entire series plays out because obviously it would spoil a lot, but Sarah J. Maas is literally one of my favorite authors. Anything she writes, I will read. I would buy her grocery list. Now that we're straying away from fantasy series, I want to talk about mystery series. So I highly recommend you guys pick up the Inheritance games and also the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Both of these series brought me out of reading slumps. They're so fast-paced. They both have really short chapters. It's so fun. It's so entertaining and just the perfect YA mystery to go into fall with. So the Inheritance games follows Avery, and she is a teenage girl going through high school and trying to make ends meet after her mom passes away, and she ends up inheriting billions. I'm talking like $40 billion from a old guy that she has never met, no idea who he is, and now in order to keep that money, she has to live in this estate with the people that were disinherited. And then the other series by her is called the Natural series. There are 4 books in this series, and it's following this girl named Cassie. It's about an FBI program that recruits teenagers that have really specific skills to help solve cold cases and active cases of serial killers. If you have watched Criminal Minds, it reminds me a lot like if the Criminal Minds characters were put into the YA world and they're learning how to use these skills to catch serial killers. There are 2 characters that can profile. There's a girl really good at statistics. there's a girl that is a lie detector, and then there's another guy that is able to tell someone's emotions based off of their facial expressions and body language. And it's so fascinating. If you love true crime and if you love mystery, I think you would really like this series. And the last series that I have for today's video is the Mindfuck series by St. Abby. Whew, this series is like a lot. It's a lot to handle. There are definitely trigger warnings, so please be safe. Go in with caution. It's a dual POV also, and it's a romance between a serial killer and an FBI agent. There's a slight twist because the serial killer is the woman. This was like so out of my comfort zone. This is like the darkest romance I've ever read. Really liked the plot, and it was really thrilling and enthralling. It just kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I will say that the romance wasn't really the big thing for me. Eventually, I just didn't really care about the romance anymore, but I really wanted to know why she was the way she was and what the big mystery was behind everything. You can count on your moral compass thrown out the window. You will sympathize, empathize, and you will root for Lana Myers. She is a badass. She is a serial killer, yes, but I support her. Do with that what you will. If you want to know why I support her, read the books. They're on Kindle Unlimited. There are 5 books total, but they're short books. So all 5 books total up to a little bit over 600 pages. I blew through this entire series because I just had to know what was going on. Alright, those are all of the books and series that I recommend you guys read for fall. I hope you really enjoy them. Let me know if you read them and if you enjoy them or how you feel about them. If you don't enjoy them, it's okay. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I am so excited for fall. I hope you guys are getting excited for fall because I am also moving into my house soon, so I will not be in this cramped space anymore. I'm gonna be able to have my library back, my bookcases, and my reading corner, and I'm so excited for fall. I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!